But we do have one more thing. You have a product-red iPhone? Well, yes, but there's also one more thing. Ooh, we have a new size for the iPad Air. Yes, but there's one more. The iPad Pros are getting an M3 chip and switching to OLED? Who do you think you're talking to right now? Look at my face. The MacBook Airs could be getting an M3 chip. Oh, God. Okay, you know what? I'm done. What is it? What? The Mac accessories are getting Type-C or what? Vision Pro! Tension, bro. What is he talking about? I don't remember. What? Sounds like all the leaks and rumors are falling towards a spring event being one of the most packed spring events ever. And like usual, I don't believe it. There's no way all of this can be true at once. Because yes, between new colors for the iPhone 15 series, that's kind of become a tradition for Apple in the spring, new iPad Airs with new chips and new sizes, new iPad Pros with new displays and new chips, and new MacBook Airs with new chips, and on top of that, Apple Vision Pro is all supposed to be ready within the first quarter. I just don't think all of this can be true. So it's a matter of figuring out which of these reports sound the most likely, and let's look at Apple's previous behavior to kind of dictate which of these sound more believable than the other, starting with the iPads. Okay, so for a long time now, people have been talking about Apple expanding on the iPad Air, which makes a lot of sense if you look at the Mac lineup. We have a big and a small MacBook Air, and the iPhone 15 lineup. We have a regular one and a big one that's not a Pro. So why can't we also do that with the iPad lineup, right? The iPad lineup's not confusing enough already. The Pros have a small and a big, and the Airs should probably also have a small and big option. And considering it's the end of 2023 and we didn't get a single new iPad throughout the entire year, I think it's pretty likely that, okay, yeah, Apple kind of owes us an early iPad launch in 2024, given this is essentially the longest amount of time Apple has officially gone without dropping any new iPads. I'm not counting that stupid iPad 10 with eSIM in China. I'm an American, and that means China don't exist around here. All of these products are just assembled in the sky and they fall in our laps. So at least in Apple's home territory, there was no iPads through 2023. That's why it makes sense to me we might have a fairly big iPad-focused event in the spring where, yes, we get a newer sized iPad Air, but the more wild card one for me is the iPad Pro, because there's been talk about the Pro iPad switching to OLED for many, many years, and it's been continuously delayed and delayed and delayed. Now, I know Apple's probably in a big rush to slap an M3 chip in the iPad because that's everyone's biggest complaint about iPads, right? Or the chips are just way too slow. There's so much more we could be doing with iPadOS, but we're fundamentally limited by the hardware. This is sarcasm, for those who can't tell. So putting an M3 chip in the iPad Pro and dropping it in the first half of 2024, that sounds reasonable, but OLED displays can be finicky, especially because Apple's not their own manufacturer, so they have to get them from the proper suppliers, and there's been OLED on tablets many times, especially if you're aware of Samsung tablets. They've had OLED for a long, long time, but usually at the price of that high refresh rate and that high resolution comes the cost of brightness, and that's something that Apple has rarely compromised on, especially when it comes to their iPads in their Macs. So they don't want something that's dim, which is usually what you have to do when you put OLED on a tablet. So the only reason I'm skeptical of a potential new iPad Pro launch at the spring event is because these OLED displays have to be kind of class leading in many ways. Of course, they gotta have ProMotion just like the iPhones do, but they also have to get particularly bright and also not compromise too much on the battery life. And I just haven't seen too many OLED displays with those specs that Apple could probably be able to source from another company for a reasonable price. So my gut reaction is that even the smaller, 11-inch iPad Pro will probably get a price hike when it gets OLED. Maybe that one's going to start at $1,000 now or $1,100, and maybe even the larger 13-inch iPad Pro with OLED could be looking at more like $1,200. Maybe they bump up the storage to help justify those higher prices, but yeah, those displays are tricky to get right. That's usually one of the biggest hurdles with iPhone production, is getting the right OLED suppliers in check. So let's just say I wouldn't be shocked if the iPad Pros get pushed until dub, or who knows, maybe they even push it till an October event, depending on the supply chain and the yields. But a larger size iPad Air with a boring old 60 Hz LCD display, just at a new 12.9-inch size and probably a new chip in there. Yeah, no big deal. I could totally see that coming in the spring. That part of the rumor sounds believable. And also, against all of my suspicions, all of the reports are claiming that Apple Vision Pro should should be ready to go around January, which is merely a few weeks away. Now, I think a January release sounds a little bit odd for Apple, especially if it's a brand new product category, so I'm anticipating that they're not going to release it without another event. So the spring event is likely where I think they're going to dive more into Apple Vision Pro, get into more of the specs, get into more of the configurations, and like the options you can get with it will go live on the website, and then we'll be able to pre-order it, and during that event they'll explain how the rollout is going to go. It might be kind of special and unique because it's a very low volume production product for Apple, and it might be the kind of thing that you can only get within an Apple store with a special appointment. They have to make sure it fits you right because they're not going to include all the accessories for all of our different heads and eye positions and all that, so they might get very picky with how you actually take delivery of an Apple Vision Pro. It might not just ship to you like any old product, and I think that will probably take up some keynote time at a spring event. A new color for iPhone 15 though, that's an easy throwaway answer. I haven't seen a ton of rumors pointing to which color it's going to be, but I would not be surprised at all considering they've done that like every single year for the past 6-7 years. I'm hoping for product red though. Typically don't like to have too many hardware announcements all at once. 3 is kind of the magic number, you know, so I wouldn't be surprised if the spring event is actually just new iPad Airs, new color iPhone options, and Apple Vision Pro, which there's probably still a ton of things to talk about with improvements they've made with Vision OS and third-party developers getting apps ready, and they want to demo those for us. But on top of that, there's also been rumors about when is the M3 chip coming to the MacBook Air. Obviously, it's just kind of a matter of time, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to skip the M3 chip entirely on the Air series, but the weird part about that is while some people are saying the M3 MacBook Airs are coming in the spring, the 15-inch MacBook Air just dropped last summer, so that would be less than a year between refreshes, which in my opinion is awfully close for a MacBook. And the other big elephant in the room with putting an M3 chip in the MacBook Air is the M3 chip, thanks to its 3nm architecture, is known for kind of running a little bit more power. It can get a little bit hotter than the M2 chip could, and that's okay in the MacBook Pros it's shipping in right now in the iMac because those have active cooling systems. They have fans, whereas the MacBook Air does not. And sure, the iPad Pro doesn't either, but that's running iPadOS, so I don't think they're worried about that. iPadOS is probably not going to have a hard time overworking the M3 chip. They could probably just put a real bin version in there and turn down the clock speed a bit because it's an iPad and no one's going to notice. But with a MacBook Air, you know, that's running the exact same macOS version as the Pros, and the differences in thermal performance might be quite noticeable, at least to the tech YouTubers. But I guess because it doesn't have Pro in the name, no one's supposed to care, right? Because it's an Air, it doesn't matter if it's weaker at performance because it's not for pros. But essentially, I think they're going to save the M3 MacBook Air refresh for the summer. It would make a lot of sense to give the M2 MacBook Air a full calendar year, at least the 15-inch version, so that no one feels like they got ripped off too quickly, and it doesn't seem like one of those like double refreshes going right after each other. It's not impossible for Apple to do that. I just think that they probably have a lot of M2 chips in stock already, and they'd rather sell out of those with the Mac Mini and the MacBook Airs because the M2 chip is plenty powerful enough. But the more important thing, I think, with the M3 MacBook Air refresh is that they do both the sizes at the same time. That way you don't have one that's really older than the other, and then when you refresh them, or do you give the smaller one the newer chip first or the bigger one first? That would get complicated and confusing. So let's just refresh both MacBook Airs simultaneously at dub, and hey, maybe throw in the M3 chip in the Mac Mini while you're at it as well. But is there anything I'm missing? Anything you're hoping to see at Apple's next spring event? There's been no rumors for it happening, but I really hope we get USB-C AirPods Max with actual USB analog audio support and lossless playback, and, you know, basically make it all EU approved, because I feel like AirPods Max are so close to being an incredible product, but they've got that stupid Lightning port on there, and I'm hoping 2024 can be the year of Lightning dying. Like, my hope is that by the end of the year, there's not any new products that are being sold that ship with Lightning. You know, I know Apple still technically sells old 30-pin cables. They can support Lightning accessories for people who still have Lightning devices, but just if you're buying a brand new Apple Watch or iPhone or iPad or Mac, I hope it's just got Type-C in the box and on the device. But all those hopes and wishes, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. Thanks again. This is your Apple Shape here, and I will see you all in the next one.